Welcome everyone to Dialogues on Race. This program is presented by the Baltimore County Public Library's Adult and Community Engagement Department. In tonight's panel discussion, we turn our attention to housing equity. We are in the midst of a housing and basic needs crisis in America nationwide. A lack of affordable housing and limited housing assistance has contributed to the struggle to just keep a roof over one's head and also contributed to homelessness. According to the US Census, the poorest families are paying over 50% of their income on housing and are dependent, of course, therefore, on government subsidies to survive. And approximately 17 people per 10,000 experience homelessness each day. How has this crisis gotten to this level? Who is at increased risk? And what can we all do to take action to be part of the solution? We will try to explore these answers to these questions today as they pertain to housing equity on the local, state, and national level. But before we get into our discussion, just a few housekeeping things. Please put your questions in the question and answer box, and we will be mindful to get to them during our question and answer period after our panel discussion. If you have any technical difficulties, you can also just place that in the Q&A, and our technical person who's here today, Stephen Janowski, will be happy to try to assist you. And before we get to our discussion, please allow me to introduce our esteemed moderator and just tell you a few things about him. Farajii Muhammad is a media personality with the special skills of community organizing and professional and non-professional management. He is from Baltimore, and he has been known as a son of Baltimore, humble in spirit and high in energy, a community servant, a musical artist, a writer, a speaker. He has used his passion for young people to advocate for their concerns. Farajii made his broadcasting debut 15 years ago as creator and host of Listen Up, that aired on WEAA 88.9 FM, Morgan State Radio. He was also invited to the Radio One family by Miss Kathy Hughes. And with that platform, Farajii used his brand of blending political and social justice knowledge with satirical humor and cultural insight to become a much needed voice about issues for next generation leadership. Issues such as police brutality, politics, education, and more. He has been a guest on CNN, Matter of Fact, NBC, NPR, and other news outlets. He formerly served on TV One's News One Now and NPR's All Things Considered as a contributor. Today, Farajii is a writer, community organizer, and weekly contributor to the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show. Welcome, my friend, Farajii Muhammad. Welcome, Farajii.
Thank you so much, Brenda. I truly appreciate it.
And Farajii will be introducing my esteemed panel tonight.
Absolutely. I want to say thank you to Brenda. I want to say thank you to the team and to the staff of Baltimore County Public Library. Thank you for having this forum. I'm very excited. I've been really blessed to be the moderator of a lot of discussions with Baltimore County because of the work that Brenda is doing with community engagement. So, big shout out to her for her consistency and bringing the voices together to have these conversations. But today we wanted to talk about something that is very, very important, something that I'm seeing happening all across the country, not just in the state of Maryland, but in places in California, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, all over the place. And so that is the issue of housing equity. and looking at how race has determined or been such a major, major factor in this ongoing struggle to accommodate the millions of people who are unhoused, or even people that do have shelters over their heads, who are not in the best living condition, who are not in safe and decent places. And so we are having this conversation, a dialogue, and I'm encouraging all of you for tuning, and I thank you for all for tuning in. And I hope that you pose your question to this esteemed panel of thinkers, of strategists, organizers, folks that know firsthand this issue. And so today we want to get into it. We're going to have some questions set up for them, and then we'll open up the forum to get your questions. So, I think we should just go ahead and get started, because I know that there's a lot to be said about this issue of housing. Let me first do this. Let me first introduce our panelists who are joining us today. And it's so beautiful how the beauty of technology can bring us all together. Brenda, I think you remember, there were times when you had forums, you had to grab people, meet me at this library.
Yeah, back in the day.
Now you just tell people, here's the link, jump right on. So, it's a beautiful thing. And excuse me if I'm a little bit under the weather, just because it was allergy season, because where I am, the weather changes a little bit. So it's all good. But let's look at these wonderful panelists that we have. I'm gonna start here with Tisha Guthrie, who is a graduate of Morgan State University, where she earned a bachelor's degree in philosophy, and a graduate of the University of Maryland, Baltimore, where she earned a master's degree in social work. In addition to working as a licensed social worker with the Stone Foundation, Ms. Guthrie is busy serving her community as a housing organizer. She is a member at large of the steering committee, Baltimore Renters United, BRU, a commissioner for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and a prior treasurer for Bolton House Residents Association. So I'm looking forward, Tisha, to hearing what your expertise and experience has shared with you about this issue of housing equity. Thank you for joining us. Our next esteemed panelist is Teara Jackson. Teara has served as a community resource specialist for the Community Assistance Network, CAN, for 4 years. In her role at CAN, Teara focuses on eviction prevention. She builds relationship with community members through outreach and ensures that people are aware of the services available to them. As a person who has experienced homelessness herself, wow, she is able to apply a deep level of compassion and understanding to helping people to avoid and overcome this crisis. Teara, welcome to the panel. Looking forward to hearing from you as well. Our next panelist is Sharonda Huffman. She earned a BA in political science from Morgan State. Morgan keeps popping up, Brenda. Where you get all these Morgan State alumni from?
My people, my people. Go back to the source.
I hear that. Morgan State University, and recently she earned her master's in public administration from Strayer University and holds a certificate as a fair housing specialist. She joined Maryland Inclusive Housing as the director of housing in May of 2022. She has a diverse background in the real estate, human services, law, insurance, and disabilities fields. She recently served as the lead accessibility and compliance coordinator for the city of Baltimore, where she directed disability-related initiatives. She also previously served as a real estate agent with the Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development. And her husband, Dr. Artis Huffman, have been married since 1998. They have 3 children, including their adult son with a developmental disability. So Sharonda, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon or this evening. Thank you. And then certainly last but not least is Dr. Kara Hunt. She is a public intellectual, educator, and scholar with over 14 years of work experience in the areas of civil rights and diversity research, teaching advocacy and management. She currently serves as the Director of Education and Outreach at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, where she provides statewide training on civil rights, law, investigations, history and enforcement, systemic and structural discrimination, inequality, best practices for effective diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace, as well as discrimination in the areas of housing and public accommodation. She holds a master's degree in African American and African Studies and a graduate certificate in Women's Studies from Ohio State University and a doctorate from the University of California, Irvine School of Humanity Program in Culture and Theater, and Theory, excuse me. Dr. Hunt, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the panel. We're so happy to have you with us.
Thank
All
you.
right,
I'm really
I
excited.
want to invite everybody to just go ahead and unmute your computers. It is allergy season. My goodness, allergy season. And look at this, I'm on a panel with these dynamic women. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Oh boy, we're about to get into it now. We're about to get into it. All right, let's first and foremost, let's have this. And again, folks, we want you to join us in a few moments because we will certainly open up the conversation to hear what you have to say. And, I'm very excited to hear the question and answer. But first and foremost, let me start here as we talk about housing equity. Now, I want to go to my sister, Teara Jackson. Teara, you have experienced homelessness yourself. So this is near and dear to your heart. Talk to me. When we say housing equity, what should we actually be saying?
It's more or less, it's almost about right. I mean, the bigger issue is poverty. People can't afford it, especially now since COVID, inflation. Renters are asking, or landlords are asking for almost triple the amount than people are actually making. And it's hard. Like being homeless, you're in more or less a fight or flight mode. So it's more or less a survival need. It's kind of hard to focus on getting a job that could actually sustain living. You just want that money at that moment because you got to focus on, in a lot of cases, family, kids that come along with the homelessness. Your mental is another big issue. Drugs is another issue that has to be addressed for the housing. All of this has to be addressed. Outside of just my personal experience, it's just something I've seen in our shelters. These are things that have to be addressed, and there is more stress when you go and you're looking at a house and the landlord is asking you, oh, you've got to make triple of what the rent is. So they're like, what? Or your credit score has got to be 700 or better. At that point, you can buy a house.
Right. Which I never understood, Teara, considering like if your credit score got to be at a certain place, say 650, 700, we want you to put 2 months down up front for the security deposit. I'm not renting an apartment. I'm gonna go and get me a house.
And most people don't understand that. Most people don't know there's abundance of grants for first-time buyers. It's also a fair sometimes. Like I said, like when you're staying in a shelter, you're staying in a hotel, or even in the streets, at this point, you just want something that you can get into. And people don't know it's not worth it. The house, the area, the schooling, if you got kids, you got to look into all of that. And if it's not worth it, I tell people to take their time. It's hard to do when you're mentally thinking, I need to get out of this situation.
Absolutely. Let me go to Sharonda. Sharonda, talk to me. When we listen to the story of like a Teara Jackson, and then we're talking about housing equity, it seems like there are a couple of things that are in place, and I want you to speak to this larger thing. Like when we're looking at housing equity, what should we actually be saying? What does that actually mean, or what do we need it to mean?
Well, to me, I used to work in the Office of Equity and Civil Rights in Baltimore City, and equity is not equality. We all have different needs to try to get to the same place. Specifically for me, I look at equity, we talked about credit. I work a lot with the disability community. So if you add race on top of having a physical or mental health disability, and because of that, I have lower income, or I might be on Social Security and I don't have credit, that exasperates the whole situation. So to me, equity is trying to give people the opportunity to get housing. One of the things I'm very proud of in the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, before it became a state law, they did pass in the city of Baltimore a source of income law. Now, not everybody understands it, but you can file complaints if someone says, I don't want to take you as a tenant because you might have a housing voucher.
Right.
So the other issue is equity as far as look at the type of housing that is available to persons that might not have higher income. Look at the communities that there are placed in. So when I worked in housing and community development, one of the things that was a tenet was try to have a more equitable communities, not just putting everything in the higher, let's say the higher income neighborhoods that might not be mostly Black, but might be white in a very Black city. So, you know, equity is a big word, but the reality is it really boils down is to getting people where they are so we can have an opportunity, because a lot of people have no opportunity to get the American dream housing.
And Dr. Hunt, I think that's one of the big concerns that I have personally. But you know, when we look at our policy, you know, people really don't see, and I don't know if we're having this conversation through this lens, that if you're not getting adequate housing, if you're not getting access to a decent place to live, that's a human rights, civil rights issue. That's not just a lack of, you know, we don't have enough houses built. That's not just a political issue. I mean, it goes much deeper. It would seem to me, Doc, that it's a fundamental human right, because we should not want to see human beings living on the sidewalk, under bridges, or moving from place to place. Especially you're talking about families. Is that the best lens that we can look at the situation as?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate the question. So at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, we are charged with enforcing Maryland's anti-discrimination laws under Title 20. So that means protections in housing, health services, public accommodations, and employment. So if individuals do feel that they've been discriminated against based on a variety of protected classes, race, origin, which also includes ethnicity and creed, gender identity, disability, so on and so forth. And we do have to talk about all of them because there's intersectionality to keep in mind in the ways in which those disparities are exacerbated when you're a member of more than one protected class. So I would say that, so I started off on the enforcement side of our agency investigating cases personally. And what I see most often is the interconnectedness with regard to the way that structural and systemic discrimination underscore an individual's inability to navigate a society that is not designed with people of color, with racialized bodies, or with people who do not fit gender norms or who are differently abled in mind. And so that means that, for instance, we dealt a lot, or I have investigated quite often, taxi cab drivers who would not allow individuals with service animals into their vehicles, homeless shelters also, as well as general, housing providers who would charge fees for service animals or wouldn't permit individuals to make reasonable modifications to their homes, or for instance, would push back against individuals if they okay, if you have a voucher, right, and we'll talk about source of income momentarily, but feeling like you're too expensive if you're a voucher holder with a disability, like, well, okay, we're already, we feel like there's this power dynamic in play because you have Section 8 or because you have a voucher, and now you're asking that we provide a flashing doorbell in your apartment because you may have a hearing disability, right? And so you need light to alert you that someone is at the front door, and it's like, oh, that's costing us money, right? Already it's like we're making a way for these people, and all of the vitriol and how difficult and unsafe an individual can feel in their home when people discriminate in this way. And I've seen people literally say, I would rather be homeless. I would rather stay in this situation than I would have to live with another predatory landlord. Like I really would. I would rather stay put, right? So when we ask, because there's such a limited period of time that an individual has to file a charge, you have 1 year to file a charge of housing discrimination. And a lot of times complainants will say, well, I waited, for a long time to say something because I thought it would get better, but also I was scared. I didn't know where else I would go. Public housing is scarce, right? And I need a home that's going to be enough for me and perhaps my aide, or me and my children. And it was already difficult enough. Like I would have to leave, I would have to find another school, right? So the conditions under which individuals live and the ways in which society, including places of employment, right, another area that we cover, lead to people internalizing this idea of wrongness, right? Or this idea of being an aberration, always a square peg who can't fit within a round hole. So
Right.
I'll say across the board, what that looks like is an individual who has a service animal, who is trying to commute to work, right? And experiencing bus drivers, experiencing taxi drivers who don't want to support them and their service animals. So you don't have that transportation. In your place of work, people believe you have an invisible disability, right? Because you have an invisible disability, what they consider to be invisible, then you're faced with these microaggressions, like you just need to stop being so anxious. I get depressed sometimes too. What's the big deal, right? You're not getting the accommodations that you need, which leads to you, resigning, constructive discharge, or potentially being fired because of harassment that you face. Now you're housing insecure. If you were living paycheck to paycheck, right now you can't afford the basics, right? You can't afford your rent. And then to wrap that all around, if you get evicted, how are you going to find your next place, right? So if you get evicted, now you have a ding on your record that's going to prevent you from being able to find stable housing. If you don't have stable housing, you're not going to be able to find another job. If you don't have transportation, you can't get to that job. So what we see is a cycle, right? People who are time and time again disenfranchised and subjugated in all of those realms, public accommodations, employment, and also housing. So I know that was a long answer to your question,
No,
but I agree wholeheartedly.
No, that's good, Dr. Hunt. And I'm so happy that you bringing this up to the forefront, because this leads me to Tisha. Is it Tisha or Tisha?
Tisha.
I want to make Tisha.
Yes.
Oh, okay, Tisha. Thank you. Tisha, when we look at it, and as I'm listening to Dr. Hunt, I'm thinking about this cycle, right? But I'm also thinking about, the work that you're doing. You're a social worker as well as a housing organizer. So you're doing it. You're in a couple of different spaces, working in a couple of different capacities. And one of the things that I'm seeing is that there has to be a way for us to kind of disrupt some level of this cycle, because it's like Dr. Hunt just explicitly and eloquently explained. It's like if you miss one part of this process, it creates a domino effect. The next thing you know, you're just out of it. You're either functionally homeless, you're homeless or unhoused, and I mean it creates this thing. So I'm wondering, and let me just say this, and I'm sure you already know this, Tisha, but you know that it's a condition that has been cultivated by a system that doesn't keep the human being in mind. It's always coming down to capitalism. It's always coming down to the profit margin, the bottom line, those things, right? So as an organizer, talk to us a little bit about, how do we disrupt this? How do we get people to see that the housing situation, the housing process, or getting folks into a decent and safe place to live it requires full support, and has to be, the way things are doing, it has to be changed.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head, and so much that's been spoken already speaks to that question. We live in a society that is hyper individualistic. pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you're able-bodied, then you should be able to attain X, Y, and Z. And we've been sold this bill of goods. And what you said, that we're living in a system, things are structured with this end result. And however you feel about capitalism, I won't even get into that. But what I think capitalism has done a poor job is playing the tape all the way through. When you structure a system with the bottom line as your sole and main focus, profitability being the end all to be all, and there are human dynamics at play, you're not accommodating for the human. You're not accommodating for what those human factors that make a society civil. So when I'm in the community and, really addressing the housing inequities and the ramifications of, a system that has strictly prioritized the commodification of everything, whether it be the commodification of food, commodification of all basic needs, whatever it is. I think the first thing is to make sure people understand. And when I say understand, I don't mean in a paternalistic manner, but just allow people to see that these are not what this society tries to spin it as, a personal problem. It's a public concern. It's a systemic issue that has been cultivated by a capitalist society. So right. It's not a personal failure. So when you start talking to people about, really dismantling that whole concept, it starts to brush away the shame that people hold on to, that people internalize. And it then starts to, when people, there's a saying, the body keeps the score. And shame is something that people internalize. It creates emotional, physical, and mental dis-ease. And when you're walking around with the shame of not being able to provide, not being able to keep a roof over your head, not being able to keep your family fed, then that creates emotional, mental, and physical dis-ease. And when you're at a state of dis-ease, you can't engage healthily with your neighbors. When you have contentious interactions and relationships with your neighbors, that creates an unhealthy and disruptive community. So it goes from a micro, a meso, to a macro level. Unhealthy, uneased people who can't meet their basic needs is going to create a harmful, it's going to create a toxic environment. And you go from that personal to that communal to that civic scale.
Yeah.
So
let me ask you this, Tisha. Do you think that if we were to change the paradigm of our approach, because a lot of it is we tend to approach a major complex issue such as housing equity from a governmental standpoint versus a community standpoint, right? So if we were to shift that paradigm and say, okay, let's start with the community. You brought up some very valuable points of shame, humanity. You bring up the points of how your whole world can be disrupted because of this breakdown of shelter. So if we were to engage the community, and let's start with the things that we can control, which is our personal sentiment toward those who are unhoused, towards those who are homeless. If we were to kind of put our emphasis, our investment in helping to reprogram the community, do you think that would lead to institutional reprogramming, governmental reprogramming?
Absolutely. I mean, we are our brothers and sisters keeper. So I was just having this conversation with a friend of mine, and again, I'm not trying to step on anyone's feet, but you know, we go to church on Sunday to praise and worship a man who was homeless, and then we step over the homeless man on Monday. You know, so again, we're talking about really identifying the fact that homelessness is not a sin. Homelessness is not a individual failure. It is a product of a system, again, that has commodified a human basic need. And our Jewish neighbors just celebrated a high holiday that elevates the responsibility of ensuring that your brothers and sisters have a house, not just a home, not just a house, that not just a roof over their heads, but somewhere that you would actually live. If it doesn't meet your standards, then it's not just. Okay, so there are cultures, there are religions that have woven this into their ethics, woven into their morale, their mores. So this is not something, you know, this idea is millennia old. So again, like you said, when we start to change the narrative within our community, and also one of Nicole King, who is a professor at UMBC, she just said this yesterday, a lot of these universities who have all this money, all this capital, and have this input, this collateral within the municipalities and the cities where they're anchor institutions, they need to be, they have an obligation to invest and move and get out of the way. You know, communities, we have the capacity to do for ourselves. If people, if institutions, if cities and developers and companies would stop raping us of our own resources.
Wow.
You know, all across the world, not just this country, but all across the world, there is a movement toward community land trust. Because just like I talk with my clients, I am here as a resource for them. They are their own best expert. They know what they need to function optimally. I am their guide, and I am here to offer my services. Same with cities and municipalities. You know, communities, whether they be quote unquote low income, disinvested communities, or better suited communities, only they know, only we know what is going to help us to flourish and thrive optimally. You know, and so, yeah.
I appreciate your insight on that, sis. Thank you so much. Sharonda, I want to get back to you because I want to just throw out some statistics here around homelessness in the state of Maryland. This is coming from the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness. And it says that for the state of Maryland, as of January 2020, Maryland had an estimated 6,360 people experiencing homelessness on any given day, as reported by the Continuums of Care to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Of that total, 616 were family households, 464 were veterans, 227 were unaccompanied young adults between the ages of 18 through 24, and 1,397 individuals experienced chronic homelessness. Now, public school data reported to the U.S. Department of Education during the 2018-2019 school year shows that an estimated 16,202 public school students experienced homelessness over the course of the year. And Sharonda, when I'm looking at these statistics and I'm thinking about, you know, in Baltimore, I think that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that we're looking at 3,000, I think it was a little bit over 3,000 people can experience homelessness just in the city of Baltimore alone. And if that's the case, then that means that Baltimore is taking up at least 50% of what the state is experiencing in homelessness. I'm wondering, is it about not having, and let me just put this out there, just keep this out there. We got so many vacant homes in Baltimore. Sharonda, I'm trying to figure out, sis, Now, I know it's not just easy, just fix up a home, put people in. I get that. And I think that a lot of people, we kind of understand that, but we don't want to understand it because it's such a problem. Help me to understand, to reconcile, how is it that we can live in a city or live in a state with this level of homelessness, and then at the same time, we have these buildings that are undeveloped. You're in real estate, they're not developed, they're not taken care for. We have landlords that seems to not care about making sure that the proper resources are going to these buildings. I mean, can we blame people? Can we blame people? Can there be something can we put some law together to start to penalize landlords and developers for keeping people on the street? Or is that not fair?
Well, that's a loaded question, but let me answer one thing. So I used to work in vacancy value. So I want to tell you, it's easy thing to say that you can just say, we have all these vacant homes. These vacant homes are uninhabitable, okay?
Right.
Unfortunately, back in the day when they had those dollar homes, that's because we had federal funds where somebody was going to help you fix those homes. So the problem we have is the level of homes that we have. A lot of the homes that people live in are really uninhabitable. I'm just being honest. So you have two different issues. You have a landlord issue, you have tenant issues. So I don't work in the city no more, so I'm going to be real. We have bureaucracy. Okay. You also have the state that doesn't want to help the city because we have a different. I don't want to help the city because I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat. We have a whole bunch of bureaucracy, and I don't think that people really care until you go and protest. And unfortunately, that's the same thing with the disability community. You talk about chronic homelessness. When you look at the definition of chronic homelessness, it's because they have a disability. And unfortunately, the city has not put anything in place to really take care of those people. It's an ongoing problem because we have a whole bunch of bureaucracy. If you look at the Office of Homeless, it's been transformed. People have left. We don't have continuity. It's a whole bigger issue. But how can we all help? That's why we have to vote. That's why we have to go to City Hall. We have to go to County Council and say this is a problem, because nobody does anything unless somebody says something. And unfortunately, we don't have enough people that are fighting for those people that are homeless. We see them right now because they're underneath of the JFX, because that's interrupting business for the farmers market. But otherwise, they're a silent population, just like the disability community. So I don't really have the answer. But the bigger picture is, I worked in city government, and I had to leave. I felt like I needed to know enough to try to make a difference on the outside. So here I am. So I don't have an answer. I don't know if anybody else can chime in to see what the solution is.
I would love for that, but I'm glad for the honesty. Sharonda, I'm glad for the honesty, because I want us to keep it real tonight. And it's sad that we have this level of bureaucracy, right? And then you talked about, the different political parties in power. But should we have to wait every 4 years or every 2 years to finally get some stuff done? I mean, this is, of course, I guess that's a bigger question for the whole country, right? But it just goes to show you that there isn't enough emphasis on this.
It's not.
And I have to ask, like we do, we must not have the political will to get this done. Let me bring into the other sisters in it. Teara, what's your take on this?
So my take is really the same as hers. There's no actual right or wrong answer how to address this. You always got to start, I feel, with our politicians. We've got to go and address, people have to be aware of who they're voting for, be more alert of what they're voting for, be more informative. Unfortunately, that's things they're not realizing who they're voting for. Some people are like, oh, well, they're just Democrats, so I'm gonna just vote Democrat. Honestly, if they're not working for what you need or tailored to your needs, why vote for them? But I'm so big with hitting the politicians. They've got to see this firsthand. A lot of times politicians have come through my organization and been to food drives of ours and seen firsthand. If you're not out there seeing this firsthand on what we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis with hunger, with poverty, with homelessness, we've got to hit them there. And unfortunately, the word's not getting out how the view is. It's not, I don't know where it's not clicking at, but it's not clicking.
So are you saying, and let me make sure I'm clear, Teara, are you saying that politicians have to see it firsthand to realize it's a problem?
I feel so. Yes. I've noticed the ones that have seen it have tried to make a difference, or at least pretended that they've tried. And it's just because if you're sitting behind closed doors with no windows, you're not gonna see what's going on in the outside world. You're not gonna see if it's raining outside. You're not gonna see if the sun is shining. And they keep those blinders on, they're not gonna address the issue because it's not affecting them personally. So why would you do anything that's not affecting you personally? Unfortunately, we're in a community or in a world where it's a lot of times dog eat dog. It's for yourself and your family.
Okay, so let me ask, and Dr. Hunt, is that, to Tiara's point, is that a issue that the organization needs to, like who, and I'm not trying to say who's to blame, but we need, what needs to be done differently? Because it's hard for me to believe, and I'm not saying, it's just hard for me to believe that if you travel into downtown Baltimore and you don't see those encampments, or you see those encampments and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know homelessness existed in Baltimore. I mean, or if you go into Baltimore County and you see people homeless right there in Towson, you know what I'm saying? In the seat of power, you see people who are homeless. You're like, oh my gosh, I did not know that this was existing. Like, something inherently is wrong. Either the politicians that we voted in to represent our interests need to be removed because they're blind as hell, or something is not being pushed strong enough. And I know, Dr. Hunt, there are 1,000 different things like cooking on the stove. So we can't expect that everything is going to be picked up. But I'm just wondering that how do we bridge the disconnect of knowledge and the disconnect of not seeing?
Well, I do have an answer for you. I think it may shift the conversation a bit though. And if I may, I know I'm not the moderator here, but I saw Sharonda had their hands up and I wanted to just be sure if there's something more specific than if I could pass the mic.
Oh, well, thank you. I did want to say one thing that
sure.
Miss Guthrie and I we know each other because we are trying to get them to change the law. They have let laws expire in Baltimore City for inclusionary zoning so we can have affordable housing. So let's go back to something else. Who pays the politicians? Developers. And so everybody is waiting to see what developers want because they want to keep their seats. So that's all I want to say. And I'm gonna just pass it on.
Wait, hold on, Sharonda. Hold on, Sharonda. No, ma'am, sister. Can't drop no bomb. Who pays the politicians, developers? All right, let's move on. Let's go on. No, because see, here's why I'm saying that we need to take a moment to really let that marinate. Is because we might have some folks that are tuning in who don't understand how power flows in City Hall or in our in county government. People don't know how much power developers wield in those conversations. And so I think we may need to kind of just step back a minute and say, okay, not assume that everybody understands the dynamics of power. That if we have a developer, and I'm not going to name any names, I know some developers, but if we have a developer who wants to invest, quote unquote, $100 million in a given area, they want to build up this new building or this new high rise or this new living facility, this new living space. Like break it down for us if you can, Sharonda. How did it work in the city when it was talking about, and I know you're not in the city anymore, so I'm just asking in your past life, sis, how did it work with the developer? Yes, in your past life.
So let's just be honest, this is why we have equity laws, because a lot of this, these development projects or small developments will go to big developers. You had to know somebody. There wasn't necessarily, and I worked in housing and community development, and it was more like, let me go ask the city council person how they feel, and I want to also be honest, we have to look at our own communities. We don't know what we don't know, but sometimes we reinvent the red line. If your community doesn't want it, because how many people, when I live in a community that says, I don't want Section 8, okay? But Section 8 is you too. It could be you any day. Okay, my child gets Section 8 because he has a disability. I just don't understand why we always are like, we get at a certain point in our life, but we forget that our sister and our brother might need an extra help, an extra hand. So before the equity law, what happened is you would get a development contract, you would get a person that wants to bid on one of those vacant homes, right? But that person might not have the knowledge or the understanding or get all the help that we should have MBE laws that assist those small developers, or how do you get to point A to point B? So the same people keep getting the development contracts, because somebody like me that has a little nest egg, but just doesn't know the right connections. And that goes back to, we don't have a seat at the table. You know what I'm saying? So we have to have a organization to say, this is what you need to be a developer. But if the city doesn't teach you, then we're going to keep giving the money to somebody else. Now, I am part of organizations that are about affordable housing. You know, so I'm not even going, not every developer is bad, because they see the what we need to do to make the city better. But there are some developers, they're looking at what's the bottom line. There's nothing wrong with that. Do you go into business to make money? But we also have to look at government to help subsidize those people so they can make affordable housing. And when we did that inclusionary housing rally, it was behind a building that the city had gave all these tax credits to, but there was no affordable housing in there. People that work in there could never afford to live there. But that's what we're trying to get at. And we're trying to push city council in Baltimore City to at least get housing community development to come back and say, okay, let's have a hearing about these laws so we can get it passed. Because right now there is no inclusionary zoning. And that's very important. So we can, if you have new development, there's going to be affordable housing included. And then we also have the Affordable Housing Trust, and Ms. Guthrie's a part of that. And part of my thing was, what is your little criteria? Said you might have somebody that has a disability, that they might, those developers would say, okay, well, let me set aside for people with disabilities. Because one thing I want to tell you, well, all those statistics you named, the biggest minority are people with disabilities. And guess what? If we live long enough, we're going to be part of that population. And I don't think people hear that, because that's the silent group. They might pay attention to seniors, but somebody like my son who has autism, he's not necessarily the voter you're going to seek. You know what I'm saying? Because then he doesn't have a voice. So the voices are with money and those people that have mouths like us. And sometimes we have to activate other people to join along with them, because they don't really know how it affects them. But I'm gonna get off my soapbox. Thank you.
I hear you. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Tisha, talk to me, sis.
Yeah, to piggyback off of our sister over here, I mean, we talk about the unseen disabilities. You know,
Yeah.
First of all, I'm a transplant recipient. I received a kidney transplant from my father, a pancreas transplant from a deceased donor. I'm legally blind. So, you know, with all that, and I'm a Section 8 voucher holder. So, you know, speaking directly to what Sharonda is saying, there are people out here who are, as they say, living their best lives in the vein that we are doing our very best. We are contributing to society. We are working in the community. We are giving back. We're giving of ourselves, and we need help. We need subsidies. And that person is your sister. That person is your brother. That person is your niece and nephew. So we really need to understand that the taxpayers are making these subsidies possible. We're making the subsidies for people with disabilities possible. We're making subsidies for low-income families possible, but we're also making those subsidies for these luxury apartments possible. And we don't really think about that because the media really doesn't spin it that way. We are subsidizing luxury living. We're subsidizing single bedroom apartments for almost $3,000. The woman or the brother who's working as an environmental service employee at Hopkins, making $15,000, maybe $12 an hour, their dollars are subsidizing that living. So we really need to be mindful. We need to be very careful about how we cognitively grasp the money, the funds that our city is using, and make sure that we understand that we're all we all deserving of a dignified way of living.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Hunt, I want to get your take on this. And then I want to, in a few moments, I want to take some questions from our audience as we have this conversation. And folks, post your questions in our Q&A because we would love to hear exactly what you're thinking. And as we're having this discussion, we might be talking about one thing, but you want to hear something else being discussed relating to housing equity. But Dr. Hunt, when a couple of things come to my mind as I'm listening to Sharonda and Tisha, one is, should we be in a space of resistance? Or should we be in the space of working with agencies, developers? What is the best approach? And the reason I'm asking is just simply because I think we've seen examples of both, right? We've seen examples of communities that have, I've worked in the Berkeley community, for example, and in the neighborhood of Berkeley, when I was working with Strong City, Baltimore, one of the things that we did is that we worked with a developer who was doing, they were doing affordable housing, affordable apartments right there on North Avenue along Greenmount, and working in that with that company in order to create an affordable housing, nicer places, apartments and homes, but at the same time, right in the middle of the city, in a space with the hope that that's going to flourish and create some partnerships. And I know that model had a little bit of hiccups and all of those things, but I was like, there might be something that we can take from this. Or do we need to be in a space of resistance where we're constantly blazing and shouting and protesting? What's the best way to get some results from this?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I appreciate it. So I will say that in response to the insightful political dialogue that came before, that a lot of it is interconnected in such a way that we have to consider race and gender at the intersection of service provision. I will say that the overwhelming majority of state workers, local workers, and nonprofit workers who serve subjugated, marginalized, and underserved communities are Black or brown non-cis men. And so for that reason, a lot of times it goes under the radar that those folks are underpaid, and that it is very difficult to get taxpayers and elected officials to recognize that this workforce that is predominantly people of color is underpaid and overwhelmed. And a lot of times our commitment to the work, right? And I'll say even at MCCR for our investigative staff in particular, we are overwhelmingly Black and brown people, and we are investigating and putting our hearts into it, because a lot of times those are the people you're looking for, people who say, this is my ministry, this is my mission in life, this satisfies my soul, and so this is what I want to do no matter the pay, but I still have to survive, right? And so what happens is if we're not paying, if there aren't, cost of living adjustments or increases in salary, then what you get are people who are burnt out, and then who themselves start to take on some of these stereotypical attitudes and behaviors toward their clientele, right? Or toward, their customers in terms of providing service, because they're burnt out, they're stressed out, they're tired of it, right? And a lot of us, when we receive that kind of stress, you have to be able to put it somewhere, right? And when you're expected to work 12 hours a day, no time for self-care, no work-life balance, right? You're not allowed to have, potentially overtime pay. Your cases are stacked up. There's more expected of you. And you know what? When we have a great resignation, right, in the way that we do now, those lower wage jobs are the ones that start to disappear first, right? Those are the people who say, well, forget this. If I don't have to work out in the community and I don't have to be unappreciated and I don't have to be underpaid, then I'm going to leave. But that means that there's a substantial portion of marginalized, right, and disadvantaged individuals who don't have access to the services they need. So I think that is a little considered portion of the political conversation, is the predominantly Black and brown women who populate the social work and social service fields. I will say, there's a line between where it's like, well, I'm a person, and I work for the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. So if we could just be clear and stop it there, that was my Maryland Commission on Civil Rights answer. So now if you're asking me, Kara Hunt, outside of my job in terms of resistance or in terms of what we should or shouldn't be doing, I want to be clear with regard to my political stance that I don't believe Black people owe this country anything. I don't believe that we should have to justify our laboring. I don't believe that we should have to labor in service of anything or justify why we need housing support in the way that you figure our labor, the labor of our ancestors, as well as the cultural labor that we produced right now, is readily consumed by this society. It keeps this society running. And so we labor even when we're sleeping. We labor in our dreams. We labor psychologically. We are constantly stressed. So the very idea that we should have to justify why we have Section 8 housing or why we, need to navigate society differently, the fact that we're constantly expected to explain is monotonous, and it is a form of violence, in my view, asking people to justify why they need help when the nation itself has not justified why it has behaved the way that it has and why it's provided no restorative justice or reparations for that behavior. So I am not, Kara, me personally, I am not in the, I don't operate in such a way that I feel like I need to explain myself as a Black woman. I don't. I feel like there's plenty other people out here who owe explanations. If Black folks need housing, if we need higher incomes, if we need if we need any kind of a human rights support, or if there's any issue that's plaguing us, better believe you can trace it back to chattel slavery. So I'm just not in the I'm not in the pattern. I don't explain myself that often in that way, and those are my politics, and that's me personally. So I don't want it to seem like I'm avoiding your question, but I'm just saying that I'm an advocate of our youth understanding that we're owed an explanation. We don't owe anyone to explain. Don't forget to tell my job that
Yes, ma'am.
that was not okay. Thank you, because I stopped my answer
Yes,
a while ago, right? And I'm here as two people, so.
I'm not going to question nothing about you ever again, sis.
Yeah. I mean, that's me, right?
No, nothing but love and respect. I truly, truly understand, and I feel you about that. And I think that's the other part about it. And I'm glad that you take that stance, because so much of this, I've learned early on in my organizing years, sisters, that regardless of whatever the policy is, it stems from an attitude. The attitude is the starting point of policy. Mm-hmm. And so if the attitude is one of superiority, the one of, not, I could take people for granted. If the attitude is one of, I don't need to justify, why we make certain decisions, you just need to follow and obey. If the attitude is one of white supremacy, then we're going to see policies that reflect that attitude. And I think that's what we've been seeing. And I think, Sharonda, you mentioned it earlier, talking about the redlining issue. I mean, that's an attitude of supremacy and power. I'm going to just redline. I'm going to dictate. I'm going to break up somebody's neighborhood, and I'm going to determine, without their consent, without them being informed, I'm going to determine whether this neighborhood gets money for and resources versus this neighborhood. I'm in California right now, in the city of Los Angeles, and if you've been keeping up with LA City Council issues, we know that is the type of thinking that has been running city government for years, where people have been having these backdoor meetings and determining the future, the political, economic, and social future of people that don't have the power to speak up for themselves. And so that's the place that I see that I see us in LA, whether it's Baltimore, across the country. People don't have the power to speak for themselves. All right, let me just do this very quickly. I want to take a couple of questions very quickly as we look at this issue here and get some answers to some of these questions. And folks, you can hear the power, you can hear the expertise in our panelists. These women are not playing, They are serious about this issue, and we want you to join us for the conversation. All right, first and foremost, let's start with this anonymous question. Is there any legislation in the state of Maryland or more locally that would address housing equity issues? Is political will enough to move the needle? Who wants to take a shot at that question?
I want to encourage people, if they're in the city of Baltimore, to advocate for the city council to pass I'm gonna say a very comprehensive, because we don't want to just anything, inclusionary zoning bill. The city has allowed that bill to sunset. So right now, developers do not have to include affordable housing as they were supposed to do by law, but I don't know how effective the past law is. One of the major advocates for the passing of that law is Odette Ramos, and she has been leading that. Right now, it's kind of stuck in committee because they're waiting for housing and community development to give their feedback. And then it should be going hopefully to a full council meeting for a vote and hopefully get passed by the mayor. So that is one bill that is out there right now, but I want everyone also to consider that in Maryland, we have new legislators that are going to be coming aboard. So these are the type of things that we need to make an issue as we get new legislator, as we have a new General Assembly. One other thing I want to just put out there, we need funding for some of our existing programs for affordable housing. So just recently, I worked in the realm of intellectual and developmental disabilities. The health department's Developmental Disability Administration, they actually understand exactly what you're talking about, Farajii. The community has to kind of come up with these solutions. So they have funded our organizations, the nonprofit organizations that also provides housing support services. But one of the bigger things that I do is try to advocate all through the state so we can get more affordable housing and take in consideration persons with disabilities to get that housing. So they have, they had this thing, okay, yeah, this sounds great. We're going to give vouchers to people who have intellectual disabilities. And that is the waiting list is right now. And so the money will be coming out. But we have to keep funding that as they said they were going to do. We have to keep funding all of those, the home affordability, people with disabilities can purchase houses, but the only people that probably really taking advantage of that is people who probably work and they might be blind or something like that, but they are able to work. But we need to take in consideration, like I know a lot of the inclusionary housing, we'll talk about like 50% of the annual median income. But you also take in consideration people get Social Security might be at 15%. So these are issues that we have to raise up. And so those are some of the things that I think we should all take in consideration and even talk to our state legislators about what can you do about it. So that's all I have.
Anyway, and I thank you so much, Sharonda, for that. Anyone else want to offer some insight for this question as well?
I would definitely ditto everything Sharonda indicated. Also, we really need for our state to and our city as well to look at the eminent domain laws, because right now we see what eminent domain has done over generations, whether you're looking at how the city has used it, how Johns Hopkins has used it, how and continues to use it, how the University of Maryland has and continues to use it. We really need to dismantle some of these existing laws. And we also, as was mentioned earlier, I think Sharonda mentioned the Maryland Home Act. We need to make sure that people are educated about the laws that protect them and make sure that these laws, the devil's in the details. There are laws in place that we don't know about. We don't know how it protects us. We don't know that when our rights are being violated. So know your rights. We need to make sure that we're getting out there and we're educating the community about the laws that exist. If you call an apartment complex and initially they say they have a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom available. And then you say, all right, I'm coming to see it. And by the way, I have a Section 8 voucher, or I have a VASH voucher, or, whatever your subsidy is. And all of a sudden they no longer have that apartment available. That's a lawsuit. That is a definite violation of your rights. But a lot of people don't know that. We still have these websites online, section8housing.com. There's no such thing as something specifically for Section 8, because you can live anywhere if you have a voucher, as long as that rent, that quoted rent is covered, is low enough, or your voucher is high enough to cover that rent. So we need to make sure that people know their rights.
So Tisha, before we move forward from that, what are some of the resources that you would offer? Any particular site that you can share with us to get more information to empower us?
So that's one of the things that Baltimore Renters United does. We have a monthly tenant/renters, citywide renters meeting. And one of the biggest components of that meeting is Know Your Rights. We gather together, we have 2 meetings. One is in the morning, the other one's in the evening, so that we can accommodate people who work during different shifts. And the whole idea is for people to gather together and to share their lived experiences, but also we have a lawyer there who can talk about the experiences you're going through, violations that your landlord you may be experiencing with your landlord, and also giving you the information around your rights. So yeah, that's definitely one resource I can highlight.
So I was
Baltimore's Renters United.
Yes.
I just want to throw this out there very quickly. BeMoreRentersUnited.org is the website, folks. BeMoreRentersUnited.org is the website for Baltimore Renters United. Yes, ma'am, Dr. Hunt.
Oh yeah, so I was going to say that in response, and it may not be direct, right? But hear me out just for a second here. So in terms of the available laws, right, and also whether or not there's anything active, I would also like to just suggest that we consider how those laws are penned and who exactly they're going to serve, because a lot of the struggle, especially for Black folks over the years, has been trying to figure out what type of language will lead us to liberation or some form of restorative justice, right? Especially through the lens of the law. So we could talk about this as a housing issue, right? We could talk about, all right, you go back to the Emancipation Proclamation, right? Go back, take a look at it. It abolishes slavery except for in cases of incarceration, right? Imprisonment. And so that opens a space for individuals to create erroneous laws, right? Black codes or laws that were prevalent in the Jim Crow South, so that individuals who were simply, trying to navigate and build in society could be arrested for simply assembling without a white person present, or for not being employed, which then meant that individuals who were there to, who were in a position, for sharecropping and a wide range of agricultural and domestic positions, to say, hey, since you have to have a job or else you could be incarcerated and work from dawn until dusk under the whip, right? Then you are going to get a job wherever you can get a job. So let's move forward and take a look at some of the legislation. So we could look at the Fair Labor Standards Act, for instance, which established the 40-hour work week, right? And also outlawed child labor and set a minimum wage, except for in the case of domestic and agricultural workers, which meant that Black folks and brown folks were exempt from that law and still were subjected to child labor, still were subjected to, a lack of minimum wage and a lack of, any form of limit on working hours, right? Okay, so that becomes outrageous, right? The service quality also, you look at Plessy v. Ferguson, but I don't want to, you know what I mean? And you could look at separate but equal, but I won't go that deep into it. I'll say what the result is, right, after the Fair Housing Administration, for instance, starts to subsidize home loans, right, and requires that in order for individuals, right, predominantly white individuals, Black people were not permitted to access those federally backed home loans, that in order for you to be able to even purchase a home that was federally backed, there had to be a racially restrictive deed or covenant that said, hey, listen, Black people can't live here. Black people can't live on the property or on the premise. So then what do we, on the premises? So what do? We say, well, what we want is equality, right? So what we want is to be able to be equal, to live wherever we want. So we get the Civil Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act, and great. But I'm just saying, in terms of legal strategy, those laws require that entities not discriminate based upon race. But there's not any redress there, right? And I want us to keep focus on that. That means that it's not an approach to equity, it's an approach to equality, right? So it's saying from this moment on, you will not discriminate in this way. You have to rent to Black people. You have to rent to brown people. You cannot do this moving forward. But that approach has left us in a worse condition statistically, right? Home ownership statistically is lower for Black folks now than it was at the time of the passage of the Civil Rights Act and the Fair Housing Act, right? We are actually worse off in taking an equality approach to trying to address some of these systemic issues with regard to housing insecurity. So that is what I will add. Again, I don't want to be super long-winded, but I do want to say, when you see these pieces of legislation, sometimes they can look like the goal is great, like, yes, what we need is equal access and opportunity. But time and again, what we find is that we need some kind of a restorative approach. We need to be open and bold with the legislation and recognize that it's some of these mindsets that we've discussed on the call now, like, don't look at me as somebody who's trying to get a handout. Don't look at me as somebody who is trying to use the system. It is okay to say we are owed something, and equity looks like putting people in the position to have the same access, if not more access, than those people who have been in positions of privilege in the past. So when you look at the legislation and it says equality, that is what I would, want us to just really think a bit more about, right? What does that look like? And why do we feel so guilty about legislation and political positions that center Black and brown people, right? Why does that make us feel like, no, what I'm saying is I just want to be equal to you, right? And so just taking a look at the legislation and the types of committees that are established around studying this issue, for instance, reparations, I think that's where a lot of our focus should be. And thank you for allowing me to have the floor for that long. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're adding to the conversation, Doctor, and thank you. I wanted to, just for the interest of time, take a few more questions, and folks, continue to post your questions in our Q&A as we're having this conversation. You can hear the expertise, you can hear the passion of all of our esteemed panelists. So I'm so grateful to have these fantastic sisters joining us for this discussion. For Teara, what has made the difference in your journey, and what do you tell the clients that you work with to inspire them to keep striving for empowerment? That's the question to you, Teara.
So I'm still on my journey. I'm actually freshly out of homelessness. It's only been about 6 years. Once you're out of homelessness, it doesn't stop, especially now.
For how long, sis?
Since 6 years. So I've been out of CAN because since I work for community assistance, I actually lived in that exact shelter. So I left that shelter, got into a house, and I was one of those clients that I needed to just get into a house at this point. And I made a decision that wasn't exactly, it was a fix now situation to get me and my 4 children out of a shelter. So I'm always still in that journey of finding a more stable way of everything. I've explained my story. I've actually talked, I used to work at a shelter when I first got here for the organization. And I talked to the women in there. I've talked to men. As somebody now that helps with eviction prevention, I have to explain to clients, hey, look, I've been in your situation. I know how scary it is to be facing the sheriff at your door. I've had where clients have called, or I've been on the phone trying to pay their rent and the sheriff's at their door. So to calm them, I've always had to say calm. I've had tenants or clients sit there and say, hey, look, like, I've always thought you guys judged. No, we don't judge, not all of us. I don't want anybody to feel that way. So I have explained my story over and over. I mean, it is my story. It's not to compare it to your story because your journey is your journey. But I always try to reassure people, the person on the other end of that phone call is probably been experiencing something similar to you. And we're not here, we're always here to help. So I always, even when I go to outreach events, I always explain to people, don't hesitate. It's nothing wrong for asking for help. It is okay to get the help and to know that there is organizations and people out here that are fighting to help you stay in your home and know your rights. I've had it, I try to keep it calm, and my journey will never end. It's always there. Down to other charity works for other events and stuff like that. Even my kids, to keep me grounded and to always remember where I came from. Yeah, my journey will never stop.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic, Teara. Thank you so much for responding to that question. Ladies, we got a few moments left in tonight's panel, and I want to give each one of you an opportunity to kind of provide some closing remarks, some closing thoughts that of how do we move forward from this? I mean, we talked about everything from the policy side to even dealing with the human sentiment and the human attitude around homelessness and housing equity. So where do we go from here? I'm asking a question that Dr. King posed to us many years ago. Where do we go from here when we're looking at this? What should be the next step for the city, for the county, for the state of Maryland as we address this issue? And Tisha, I would like to start with you, sis.
All right. Since you mentioned Dr. King, you know, I'm going to challenge people to dream, like to really dream, and not just to as Dr. Huff said, you know, want to have what someone else has, because the fact of the matter is that we are deserving of what our imagination can produce, whether that image in your mind is community controlled development, whether it is you know, cooperatives, whether it is food sovereignty, but we have to be able to capture for ourselves what our best community looks like. And that comes from, you know, first knowing individually, you know, what am I lacking? What is it within me that is maybe deterring me from being my best self? And oftentimes it comes back to basic needs, that sense of belonging in a community, in a family, having your basic needs met, having a stable housing, you know, having good food to eat, having good water to drink. I live here in Poppleton. So just less than a month ago, we had to boil our water, you know. So asking the questions of what makes us whole, what makes me whole, my family whole, my community whole, and being able to articulate that. When you're able to articulate and conceptualize it, then you're able to be in community and start, you know, working together to see, well, how do we get here? And knowing that we have all the human resources within our own communities to bring this to fruition. You know, the first thing is to conceptualize it. Second thing is to articulate it, come into community. And then, just like was said earlier, we vote, but that's the first step. The first step is voting. Then we have to use our will. We have to force our will upon these public servants because they serve us. They serve us, and they've gotten that. They have forgotten that. We have to remind them. That's what Mrs. Sonia Edie and Poppleton now, that's what they did. They reminded the city that they serve us, you know, and that's why Mrs. Edie's home and the Sarah Ann homes have been taken off of the demolition list. But that's just one example of how the power of the masses, the people power, moves city government.
Sorry about that. And I appreciate you saying that, Tisha, that we do have to put the pressure on them to make them accountable for the job that they said they wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Which is the craziest thing, Sharonda. It's the craziest thing. Why do we got to remind you to do the job you signed up for? But
yeah,
that's what
people get big heads. I think sometimes we forget that this is not England. And once you become a politician, does not mean you're king or queen. So what I'm going to do for myself is I have a wonderful job. We're at Maryland Inclusive Housing. So we are rebranding our website so we can offer resources. Part of my job also is I have developed housing committees throughout the state. Right now, I have one in Baltimore City, Montgomery County and Howard County, but I'm also going to expand that to Baltimore County, Eastern Shore, Western Maryland, because each population is a little bit different. Even though Baltimore City and Baltimore County are right next to each other, they got different laws and different issues. And what I'm trying to do is understand each of these different issues and mobilize people. So I became a part of wonderful organizations that are already doing the work, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel. So it's really about getting the message out there and really saying, look, you decide you want to be here. So what are you going to do for us as a people? Because we do have power in our vote. We also have power in saying, look, this is what we want. And we have to always remember, we are the queens, okay? And all of our queens, we have to get together and we have to have community in order to say, this is what we stand for. Because a lot of people will just say, I want you to go fight for this. But I'm going to say, I'm going to fight for this, and I'm going to fight for us, and I'm going to fight for our kids. I'm going to fight for people with disabilities. I'm going to fight for our brothers and sisters that might not be able to speak for themselves. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm looking forward to the new legislative session. I'm going to also look at the federal laws. We currently have we have 2 years left with this presidency, and there's some more stuff that can be done. And sometimes we forget about the things that can happen just by some executive order. So if they get rid of our tax or some of these student loans, and don't forget to sign up on that paper, get $10,000 off, then they can get rid of some of this debt to help other people become homeowners. So, that's what I'm going to do personally.
Awesome. And what's the website for the Maryland Inclusive Housing?
It is MIH-INC.org.
Okay. MIH-INC.org. And I'm going to say to my tech team, I don't know if we can get a list just to make sure that we put everybody's website, the institution's website up, or
yes, we can, and we can make sure that goes out to all of the participants.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Brenda. Dr. Hunt, what are your closing remarks, ma'am?
You know what, I do want to say first and foremost that I am very grateful to Brenda as well as the entire Baltimore County Public Library system for the opportunity to be here. I have really appreciated BCPL's support in the past with regard to rolling out some of our programs with regard to housing disparities. So your partnership really does mean a lot to the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. I also just really appreciate everyone on this panel as well as the attendees for being open, for being willing to share space, and for being willing to do this work and to speak our truths without fear. I really do feel guided by my ancestors in pretty much everything that I do, and this feels right to me. It speaks to my heart. And so I'm very grateful to have had this opportunity to work with you all today. And I am open to any questions anyone might have. We have a variety of training programs. We also have an introductory fair housing training module. We have a shadow pandemic module on disparities facing women of color in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have a redlining presentation that specifically covers the history of anti-Blackness and discrimination more generally with regard to federal, state, and local housing laws. And so if any of those programs could be important or meaningful to any of the organizations you work with, we would be more than happy to come out. All of our training programs are absolutely free. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Hunt. And what's the website for you as well, Dr. Hunt?
mccr.maryland.gov.
mccr.maryland.gov. Thank you. Last but certainly not least, Teara, we started with you. I wanted to end with you. You are the next generation of advocates and organizers and intellectuals and educators. So, you know, what will be your final remarks to our audience tonight?
Knowledge, learn your rights, learn what's going on in your community. It goes alongside with the dreaming. You know, you want something to look a certain way, you've got to know how to build it, where to go, where to at least start. And like she said, the resources are right there in your community. The library is free. It's got abundance of books. And we're in an era where it's nothing but technology. Google is free.
Programs like this, free.
Yes. How much I've always expressed, don't be scared to ask anybody anything. Somebody will help you, or at least be able to direct you in the area that you need to know. So I am grateful, especially since Brenda just asked me yesterday. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And Teara, is there a website that you would recommend?
So my organization is canconnects.org. A lot of times those come to me or my supervisor. So you guys can ask, or they can even apply if they need rental assistance and stuff that way too.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. That sounds fantastic. Well, sisters, I want to say that I am eternally grateful for each and every one of you and the work that each and every one of you continue to do. And, you know, in the spirit of what Dr. Hunt said, I'm grateful to be able to hold space with you dynamic women as we talk about the issue of housing equity and making sure that everything is all good. And so I thank you for being a part of the conversation tonight and sharing your expertise and your analysis, because it is so necessary. And I want to thank Brenda once again for bringing us all together as she does the great work of community engagement for Baltimore County Public Library. She continues to do it. She does it very well. She's consistent. She always brings the best and the boldest and the brightest together. So we thank her so much. We thank the tech team for making this happen. And I certainly want to thank all of our audience members for tuning in to this evening, just to spend a little time to learn how they can become better citizens and better neighbors and better human beings. Thank you so much. Brenda, back to you.
And thank you, everybody, for coming, for sharing, for blessing us with so many gems of knowledge, all of your contributions, each and every one of you. It's been a memorable conversation. There's been so many different valuable tools that you've given us that we need to just be paying attention to. All the way from just understanding how multifaceted the civil rights issue of homelessness and housing equity is, and all the different ways that people are suffering and being brought to shame. And we need to change our attitudes, and we need to connect with our communities so that we can achieve all of the things that we are entitled to and that we are dreaming to achieve. So keep speaking your truth. Thank you all. Let's lift each other up in prayer. And thank you so much for attending this program tonight. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.